My name is Chloe. I'm 32 years old, and my life, until last Tuesday, was curated. Perfectly so. Look, I'm not going to pretend I'm some kind of martyr. I knew what I signed up for. I married Daniel, who is 36, handsome in a quiet, dependable sort of way, and works in finance. He makes good money, very good money, enough that my primary occupation is to be aesthetically pleasing. That's the term I prefer over housewife. It sounds less like aprons and more like art. I manage the aesthetic of our lives. The house, myself, our social calendar. It's a job. A demanding one, if you ask me. So, it all started with dinner. Or rather, the lack of one. It was a Tuesday. Tuesdays are a blur of nothingness. I'd had a particularly grueling day of scrolling through designer lookbooks on Instagram, followed by a deep dive into a true crime documentary that left me feeling emotionally drained. By the time the clock lazily ticked past 6 p.m., the thought of chopping an onion felt like a Herculean task. We could afford takeout, so why not? I heard his car pull into the driveway, the familiar crunch of tires on gravel, the heavy clunk of his car door, the jingle of keys. Each sound was a tick on a countdown clock I didn't know was running. He walked in, loosening the knot of his silk tie. Daniel always looked worn down after work. His shoulders slumped, and the lines around his eyes seemed deeper than they were in the morning. He dropped his briefcase by the door with a heavy thud. He looked toward the kitchen, empty, except for the two sleek, white takeout boxes sitting on the marble island. And then I saw it. The look, it wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something worse. A heavy, leaden disappointment that settled over his features like a shroud. It was the look that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. Tough day? I asked, trying to sound breezy, flipping a page in the magazine I was pretending to read. The usual, he said, his voice flat. He walked over to the island, staring at the boxes. Tie again? I thought it would be nice. A little treat. He sighed, a long, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of his entire day. Chloe, you were home all day. I was looking forward to a real meal. The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. You were home all day. As if my day of maintaining this perfect life was nothing. My day was exhausting, actually, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. And it's not like you're hurting for money. What's the big deal? The big deal, he started, his voice rising just a little, is that it would be nice to feel like I'm coming home to a partner, not just a roommate who runs up my credit card bill. A low blow, and it hit its mark. I stood up, the magazine sliding off my lap onto the expensive rug. A partner? I keep this house immaculate. I make sure I look good for you when you drag yourself home. Isn't that what you wanted? A beautiful wife and a beautiful life? I wanted a life, Chloe. Not just a showroom. That's when it happened. The anger, hot and reckless, bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. It was a nasty, venomous thing, and it needed a target. I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. A showroom? Please. Maybe if you made as much money as Preston, we could afford a personal chef. Then you could have your real meal every single night, and I wouldn't have to lift a finger. Preston. My ex. The name dropped into the silent room like a stone into a still pond. The ripples spread instantly. The color drained from Daniel's face. He didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He just deflated. All the fight, the frustration, it all just vanished, replaced by a hollow, vacant look. He stared at me, really looked at me, as if for the first time in years. And I think, in that moment, he finally saw me for what I was. I see, he said, his voice barely a whisper. He turned and walked out of the room, his footsteps silent on the hardwood floors as he went upstairs. I stood there, my heart hammering against my ribs. I told myself he was overreacting. He was just tired. He'd cool off. We'd be fine. We were always fine. But a couple of hours later, when the silence became too loud to bear, I went upstairs. His suitcase was open on the bed, half-packed, and for the first time in my perfectly curated life, I felt a genuine, terrifying crack appear in the foundation. I leaned against the doorframe of our bedroom, crossing my arms. A defensive posture. A shield. I tried to inject a note of casual amusement into my voice, as if this were all just a silly game. What are you doing, Daniel? Don't be so dramatic. You're not seriously leaving over a stupid argument, are you? He didn't even look at me. He just continued to fold his shirts with a methodical, detached precision. A crisp white one, a blue pinstripe. He placed them into the suitcase as if he were packing for a business trip he took every week. I can't believe I wasted so many years, he muttered, more to himself than to me, trying to make this work. Panic began to crawl up my throat, cold and prickly. This wasn't part of the script. In our fights, he was the one who was supposed to back down, to apologize for being too demanding, too stressed. I was the one who graciously accepted. Wasted? Don't be ridiculous, I said, my voice starting to shake. I walked further into the room. I didn't mean it, okay? I was just angry. You said I didn't contribute anything. You hurt my feelings. He finally stopped packing. He turned, and his eyes were cold, utterly devoid of the warmth I had always taken for granted. It's not just this one thing, Chloe, he said, his voice level, which was somehow more terrifying than if he'd screamed. It's everything. You don't appreciate a single thing I do for you. You spend money like it grows on trees. You don't take anything in our life seriously. And now you're throwing Preston in my face. He shook his head slowly. I'm done. I'm just done. I didn't know what to say. Part of me, the proud, stubborn part, wanted to scream at him for being so unfair. But another, smaller part felt a tiny, sickening lurch of guilt. Not that I would ever admit it to him. He zipped up the suitcase. The sound echoed in the silent room. He grabbed his coat from the closet and walked past me without a word. I followed him down the stairs, a frantic, useless string of words tumbling out of my mouth. Where are you going? Daniel, this is insane. We can talk about this in the morning. He didn't answer. He just opened the front door, walked out into the cool night air, and closed it gently behind him. He didn't even slam it. That's how I knew it was real. I stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of his car engine starting, then fading into the distance. The house was silent, oppressively so. He'll be back by morning, I told myself. He always storms out, but he never stays gone. But when I woke up the next day to the empty space beside me in our king-sized bed, the anxiety was no longer a crawl. It was a sprint. He hadn't come home. I couldn't bring myself to text him first. My pride wouldn't allow it. But by late afternoon, the silence was chewing me up from the inside. I called him, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. Finally, I gave in. I decided a voice note was the best approach. It felt more personal. He could hear the sincerity in my tone. He'd know I wasn't trying to fight. I took a deep breath and pressed record. Ryan, Daniel, can we just talk? I feel like this has all been blown way out of proportion. I didn't mean what I said about Preston. You know, I don't even like him. Honestly, here's where I thought I was being clever. I thought honesty would fix it. The only reason I ever stayed with him was because he had money. And even then, I couldn't stand him half the time. He was arrogant, selfish, just an all-around awful person. I didn't say it to hurt you. It just came out wrong. Please just come home, so we can talk about this. I hit send. And in the silence that followed, I replayed my own words in my head. The only reason I ever stayed with him was because he had money. Oh God, what had I done? I was just trying to be honest, you know? I thought if he understood how little Preston meant to me, he'd see that the comparison wasn't that deep. Hours passed. Each tick of the clock was a tiny hammer blow against my sanity. Finally, around 9 o'clock, my phone lit up. A text from Daniel. My heart leaped with a desperate hope. It wasn't what I expected. Thanks for confirming what I've suspected for a while. You just use people for what they can give you. I guess I'm no different. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was convinced. And I, in my infinite stupidity, had just handed him the proof. My first reaction wasn't guilt. It was rage. Pure, indignant rage. How dare he? After everything I did to maintain our perfect life, he was going to reduce me to some gold digger? I felt misunderstood, victimized. My flawed apology had been twisted into a confession. The next few days were unbearable. The silence from his end was a form of torture I hadn't known existed. I paced the empty rooms of our house, the echo of my own footsteps mocking me. I'd pick up my phone to call him, to scream at him, then throw it back down on the sofa, held back by a toxic cocktail of pride and fear. What if he didn't pick up? Worse, what if he did? By day 3, I was a wreck. My carefully constructed facade was cracking. My skincare routine was forgotten, my hair was a mess, and I was living on coffee and Chardonnay. The paranoia started to set in. Where was he? He wasn't at a hotel. The charges would have shown up on our joint credit card, which I was monitoring obsessively. He wasn't with his parents. His mother would have called me by now, playing the concerned mediator. So where was he? A darker thought began to form, ugly and insistent. Who was he with? I hated that my mind went there. Daniel wasn't the type. He was predictable, stable, boringly faithful. Or so I had thought. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to do something. I got in my car and drove to his office building downtown. A sleek, glass, and steel tower that always made me feel small. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to see him, to force a confrontation, to break this suffocating silence. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, watching the anonymous flow of people in suits. What am I even doing here? But the anger was a better fuel than logic. Before I could change my mind, I was walking through the revolving doors into the cold, sterile lobby. The receptionist, a young woman with an unnervingly perfect smile, gave me a polite but firm look when I asked for Daniel. May I ask who's calling for him? His wife, I said, the word feeling foreign in my mouth. She spoke quietly into her headset, then looked back at me. I'm sorry, ma'am. Mr. Hayes is not in the office today. Is he working from home? I pressed. Her smile tightened. He's taken a few personal days. Is there a message I can pass along? Personal days. He wasn't at work. He wasn't at home. The suspicion in my gut coiled into a tight, venomous knot. I drove home in a fury, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. That night, fueled by another glass of wine, I did something I had promised myself I would never do. I decided to snoop. Daniel wasn't exactly a tech genius. His passwords were laughably predictable. I sat down at his desktop computer in the study, my heart thumping a guilty rhythm. I told myself I was just looking for clues. An address of a friend's house, maybe. His email password was our anniversary. Of course it was. Maple Creek 0815. The inbox loaded. A sea of work emails, newsletters, junk mail. My eyes scanned the subject lines, searching for anything, any hint. And then I saw it. An email from Oakwood Properties. The subject line read, "Follow up on your inquiry." My breath hitched. My hand trembled as I clicked on it. The email was short, clinical. Dear Mr. Hayes, this email is to confirm your appointment to tour the one-bedroom apartment at the Ashton Residences this Friday at 2 p.m. Please let me know if you need to reschedule. Best, Sarah Jenkins. A one-bedroom apartment. Not a house. Not something for the two of us. Just him. The ground felt like it had dissolved beneath my feet. This wasn't a temporary separation. This wasn't him cooling off at a friend's place. This was a plan. An escape. He was building a new life. And he hadn't even had the decency to tell me he was demolishing our old one. The nerve, the absolute, unmitigated nerve of him. All my fear, all my anxiety, instantly evaporated, replaced by a white-hot fury. I grabbed my phone, my fingers flying across the screen as I dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. Again. This time, I left a message. My voice was low and shaking with rage. So, you're apartment hunting now? Is this your big solution, Daniel? Running away instead of dealing with your problems like a man? You are a coward. Call me back. He didn't. Not that night. And not the next day. The silence was his answer. And it was louder than any argument we'd ever had. It was another full day before he finally responded, not with a call, but with a text. It was an address for a coffee shop downtown, The Grind, and a time, tomorrow, 10 a.m., if you want to talk. Ardaya. New emotion, new explanation, just a summons. It was strange that he didn't want to meet at the house, our house, but at that point, I was desperate for answers. I would have met him in a sewer. The next morning, I spent an hour on my appearance. It was armor. My makeup was flawless, my hair perfectly styled, my outfit a carefully chosen ensemble that screamed unbothered elegance. If my world was falling apart, no one was going to see the cracks. I got there first. I chose a table in the corner, a strategic position where I could see him before he saw me. But he was already there, sitting at that exact table, a cup of black coffee in his hand. He looked calm, composed. There were no dark circles under his eyes. His jaw wasn't tight with stress. He looked like he hadn't lost a single night of sleep. The sight of his tranquility made my blood boil. Here I was, a walking disaster, and he looked like he was waiting for a business meeting. I slid into the chair across from him, my purse clattering onto the table. I crossed my arms. No pleasantries. "You're looking at apartments," I said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. He didn't flinch. He just took a slow sip of his coffee. "It's exactly what it looks like, Chloe." His voice was calm, measured. "I'm moving out." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. The background noise of the coffee shop, the hiss of the espresso machine, the low murmur of conversation seemed to fade to nothing. "You're what?" He leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering. "And I've already started the paperwork for the divorce. I've been talking to a lawyer for a few weeks. I was just getting a few things in place before I told you." The air was sucked out of the room. Divorce. The word hit me with the force of a physical impact. I knew we were fighting, but I never, not for a single second, thought it was this. "Are you kidding me right now?" My voice was a choked whisper. "You're ending our marriage because of one stupid argument?" A bitter laugh escaped his lips, a sound I'd never heard from him before. "Caroline, Chloe, this isn't about one argument. This is about years. Years of me trying to make this work while you take and take and take. I'm done." His words were like a series of slaps to the face, but it was the look in his eyes that truly broke me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was nothing. He was looking at me like I was a stranger, a business deal that had gone sour. His mind was made up. "Don't you dare act like I'm some villain here," I snapped, my voice rising. A woman at the next table glanced over. "I have put up with plenty from you. You're always working, you're never home, you never make time for me. And now you're just walking away without even giving me a chance to fix things?" He shook his head, a look of profound weariness on his face. "You've had plenty of chances, Chloe. My family warned me about you. My friends warned me. But I didn't listen. I was arrogant. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I just loved you enough, provided enough, you'd eventually change." He paused, his gaze hardening. "But you haven't. And I'm done sacrificing my own happiness for someone who doesn't even appreciate it." I opened my mouth to argue, to throw another accusation, but he cut me off. "And before you ask," he said, his voice dropping a little, "yes, there's someone else." That stopped me cold. The blood drained from my face. "You're cheating on me?" I spat, the words loud and ugly. "Don't even try to play the victim," he said, his tone sharp as glass. "You've been emotionally checked out of this marriage for years. You've been using me from day one. At least with her, I feel like a person, not just a wallet." Her. The word echoed in my head like a siren. "Who is she?" I demanded. "How long has this been going on?" Daniel sighed, looking out the window as if he was already bored of this conversation. "Her name is Sophia. She's been a friend for a while, a colleague." Things didn't get serious until I finally admitted to myself that this marriage was over. He looked back at me, his eyes holding a sliver of something that might have been pity. "She actually listens to me, Chloe. She asks about my day and actually waits for the answer. She supports my career instead of just enjoying its benefits. And unlike you, she doesn't make me feel like I'm never, ever enough." The ground wasn't just cracking anymore. It was gone. I was in a freefall. This couldn't be happening. Daniel wasn't supposed to be the one to leave. He wasn't supposed to be the one to find someone else. That was supposed to be my move. My power. Not his. "So what?" I snapped, grasping for anything that could hurt him. "You think she's so perfect? Just wait. She'll get tired of you too, once she realizes what a boring, self-righteous workaholic you really are." He just shook his head, looking at me like I was something pathetic. "I've already wasted too much time on you, Chloe. I'm not doing this anymore." He stood up, put some cash on the table for the coffee, pulled on his coat. "The papers will be ready next week," he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. "You can keep the house. I don't want it." And then he walked out. He didn't look back. I sat there, staring at the empty chair across from me. The dregs of his black coffee sat in the cup, a bitter testament to the end of my life as I knew it. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that deep down, beneath the layers of anger and humiliation, I couldn't even blame him. Not really. For years, I had taken him for granted. I had pushed and pushed, just to see how far he would bend. I just never thought he'd actually break. The divorce was brutally efficient. Just like Daniel, within a month, the papers were signed, the assets were divided, and my title officially changed from wife to divorcee. He kept his promise about the house. At the time, sitting in my lawyer's plush office, I thought it was a win, a victory. I got the 4-bedroom colonial, the landscaped garden, the symbol of our success. But now, sitting alone in its vast, silent rooms, it feels more like a mausoleum, a beautifully decorated reminder of everything I lost. The first few weeks were a blur of disbelief and whine. I'd wander from room to room, touching the furniture, staring at the photographs on the wall of a smiling, happy couple I no longer recognized. At night, I'd stare at my phone, half expecting, half hoping he'd call. A text, anything, to say he'd made a terrible mistake. He never did. Instead, the evidence of his new life began to trickle into mine through the cruel pipeline of social media. A tagged photo here, a friend's post there, Daniel and Sophia. They looked happy, genuinely, sickeningly happy. There was a picture of them hiking, another of them at a street festival, laughing, with mustard on his chin. He looked lighter, younger. The permanent exhaustion I was so used to seeing in his eyes was gone. He looked free. She was everything I wasn't. Her Instagram profile was private, but from the tagged photos, I could piece it together. She was pretty in an understated, natural way. The kind of woman who wears sensible shoes and probably enjoys farmers markets. The kind of woman who wouldn't complain about cooking dinner. Seeing them together felt like swallowing glass. It wasn't just jealousy, though there was plenty of that. It was this gnawing realization that he hadn't just left me. He had upgraded. He had shed the weight of our marriage, and now he could finally breathe. Meanwhile, I was suffocating. The bills started piling up. The spousal support he provided, which had seemed generous on paper, was a pittance compared to the lifestyle I was accustomed to. The mortgage, the property taxes, the utilities for a house this size, it was staggering. My weekly trips to the salon became a monthly indulgence, then stopped altogether. My online shopping carts were abandoned. Dinners out with the few friends who still called were replaced with polite excuses. One Tuesday afternoon, I found myself standing in front of my closet, pulling out my designer handbags, my prized possessions, my trophies. I laid them out on the bed, the supple leather and gleaming hardware a testament to a life that was no longer mine. I sold them online, one by one, just to make the mortgage payment. Each sale felt like chipping away a piece of my identity. I told myself I'd get a job. But what was I qualified to do? My resume was a ghost. A string of retail jobs in my early 20s, and then a 10-year gap filled with managing a household. No one pays you for having good taste. The loneliness was the worst part. It was a physical presence in the house, a cold entity that sat beside me on the sofa and lay next to me in our enormous, empty bed. For years, Daniel was just there, a constant. Even when we were fighting, I knew he would come home at the end of the day. Now, the silence was deafening. Out of a desperate mix of spite and loneliness, I tried dating. I downloaded the apps, crafted a witty profile, and went on a few dates. It was a disaster. Men who seemed promising in their profiles turned out to be duds. They were either unimpressed by my past life or far too interested in the divorce settlement. None of them were Daniel. I hated myself for thinking it, but it was true. I missed him. I missed the stupid way he'd hum off key when he was making coffee. I missed the way he'd roll his eyes when I bought another pair of shoes but pay the credit card bill without a word. I even missed our fights. At least when we were fighting, he still cared enough to argue. One night, after too many glasses of cheap wine, I did the one thing I promised myself I wouldn't. I called him. It went to voicemail, of course. His new voicemail greeting was just his voice, calm and professional. "No, you've reached Daniel and Chloe." Just, "Daniel." A sob caught in my throat. I left a message, my words slurring together. "Hi. I don't know why I'm calling. I guess I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. I know I didn't. I didn't treat you right. And I don't blame you for leaving. I hope you're happy. You look happy." I hung up, shame washing over me. He never called back. But honestly, I didn't expect him to. He had moved on. It was time for me to do the same. Or at least, try to. It's been 6 months now. 6 months of this new, unwelcome reality. I stopped stalking their social media. It was like pressing on a bruise, a form of self-torture I finally found the strength to abandon. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he and Sophia are talking about moving in together. A fresh start in a new place. Good for them. I say that without sarcasm now. Mostly. I got a job. It's not glamorous. It's a part-time position at a boutique downtown. I fold sweaters, steam dresses, and offer fashion advice to women who remind me of my former self. The pay is terrible, but it's a paycheck. It's mine. The feeling is foreign, but not entirely unpleasant. It's not enough to keep the house, though. The for sale sign went up in the front yard last week. It's a garish, bright red wound on our once perfect lawn. Every time I pull into the driveway, it taunts me. Leaving this place. This is the hardest part. This house is the only thing I have left of our life together. The other night, I found myself walking through the empty rooms, the furniture shrouded in white sheets like ghosts. I remembered the day we moved in, how we'd sat on the floor, eating pizza out of the box because we couldn't find the plates. I remembered Daniel painting the nursery that we never used, his brow furrowed in concentration. So many memories, so many chances I had to be a better person, a better wife. And I let them all slip away like sand through my fingers. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the loneliness is at its peak, I let myself wonder, what if I had just cooked dinner that night? What if I had never said Preston's name? What if I had seen the exhaustion in Daniel's eyes, and instead of getting defensive, I had just said, "I'm sorry you had a hard day. Would we still be together? Would he still be mine?" But it's too late for what ifs. They are a poison with no antidote. This is my reality now, alone, broke, or close to it. Starting over at 32 with nothing to my name but a closet full of clothes I can't afford to wear and a mountain of regret. It's funny. I used to think he would never survive without me. I was the exciting one, the one who brought color and flair to his black and white world. I honestly believed I was the best thing that ever happened to him. But it turns out, I was an anchor, dragging him down. And he's the one who learned to swim. I'm the one who can't survive without him. He found his happiness by leaving me. I'm just now learning how to survive by myself. And maybe that's the cruelest justice of all.